I think we're all feeling these sentiments. This is really a sentiment slide. I think most of the bigger words, if you unpick that, it is quite busy and the noise there. If you unpick it, most of the words that jump out are more pessimistic than optimistic. And I think that really goes to the core of what we've been watching very carefully since the advent of 2022. And certainly certain events have overtaken this slide when it was actually produced. But I think one thing I'd just like to stick with is that Cashbox tries to, in all the noise and the chaotic, sometimes uncertainty that's prevalent in markets and economic situations and narratives, is to try and unpick that thread and find where the opportunities are going to lie. Certainly during 2020 and 2021, great opportunities, lots of growth. We had lots of order calls. They're still coming through. But it was 2 years of quite weird times. Certainly, we've never had times like that before. And as we moved into the latter part of 2021 and into this year, in many of our narratives and our webinars, we started saying we are rotating to a little bit of value. We're taking risk off the table and de-risking in certain areas. There's always going to be the fizzy, exciting ones, but as a business, we like to be predictable, we like to be certain, and we do a lot of work in terms of trying to resonate where we are going to have the correct products for the portfolios. You know, in the rationale, which is actually on the website, I'd urge you to go and have a look at that, because it's got quite a good breakdown in terms of going back to even the 7th of March. We were saying that it's going to be very complex. And the rationale is actually headed the changing complexities of 2022. And, you know, we're now going into, you know, April, or we're halfway through April. This whole year has been tarnished with the headwinds we're facing, the headwinds, and they're getting stronger. Now, some of those headwinds were there before, and one of them has really jumped into the front and center of all our thinking. So the three that were there, inflation, interest rates, and the word recession is becoming more bandied around. These started coming out because of what happened in 2020, 2021, because there was a big rubber band growth set up around the world, a lot of recovery, a lot of energy into growth. And what that causes is that it causes inflation, causes products to become more expensive. And one way of dealing with that is interest rates to go up. We all know that central banks are now starting to taper. They're starting to turn the hosepipe of free cash off. It's happened in the States, it's happened in the UK, it's happened in Euroland, and it will happen in other countries around the world. So that interest rates and growth are quite an interesting dynamic, because if you have too high interest rates and low growth, that's a double whammy. That's called stagflation. That's really what we don't want. So the guys who are controlling interest rates have to temper it with some type of possibility for growth to still happen, but to taper people down. Now, what this is going to, I'll deal with a recession in more secondly, but what this is going to cause is that people are going to be affected at the petrol pump, at the grocery lanes, at the supermarkets, in terms of capital purchases, in terms of literally your staple foods, your discretionary monies. It's all going to put a burden on where do you invest for safety and security, and where are those opportunities going to come from. So if you take a look at the war, we all know what's happened there. It's a global disaster, really. It's affected lives, the ideals of democracy, economies, and a whole cultural shift. Effectively, we're going back to what could be a new Cold War, where the whole bias, not just of Europe, but the bias of, I would suggest, the world is changed. I mean, Russia, to a large degree, has become a pariah state. But the problem there is that it's an economy that has been so linked to the rest of the world for so many years. This is not World War II. The world, whether it be the internet, whether it be commercial, economic arrangements, they are all intrinsically linked together. So many commodities, so many goods, whether it be gas, oil, wheat, platinum, you name it, comes out of that area, that Eastern European area, and Russia. It's not sanctions being put over the whole of the Russian country. it's going to cause further backlogs, it's going to cause further delays, but it's also going to cause price increases. Now, recession means that people then go into a position where they can't actually afford what they would normally do. The UK, funnily enough, if you watch Ray's online here, but I've been watching Sky quite interestingly, where people, normal Joe and Jane public in the street, are now starting to consider, do we buy food that we have to heat up, or do we buy something that doesn't have, that can just open out of a can and eat? In other words, it's a choice between energy and food. So these are basics, these are sort of fundamentals of survival, because the increases and the costs are coming through these knock-on effects from this war, which is not an Eastern European conflict. It is an Eastern European physical conflict, but it's a global battlefield now. Recession is obviously, we don't want to get into that, but I think what Cashbox did in terms of this particular product is to say, if people are in difficult positions of choosing between energy and food, and how do they compare those prices? What has been one of the tailwinds that we came through 2020 and 2021? And those were those disruptive industries that had been knocking on the door for quite a few years, and that have now become part of our DNA. They're part of our daily sort of behaviors. And one of those is obviously e-commerce. How do you do business? The economic lockdowns causes people to go into work from home, stay at home, and there we have it. Disruptive industries are now mainstream. There's the shopping trolley. And this is what I think is very interesting. I'm going to go through 10 points later in terms of how e-commerce has taken over from literally 1995, 96. Some of the mainstream disruptive industries and companies are struggling, or they're finding it slow to pivot into a new hybrid world because we are going back to work. But certainly e-commerce is something that drives through on quite a few different levels. Consumerism is a nasty beast, and this is where e-commerce unfortunately sits, where big businesses put out product and people in the street, ourselves, go and buy that product. It's going to exist. It's not going to disappear. It's out of necessity. The current economic models, and I'm not an economist or a modeler, but certainly they're not going to disappear overnight. It's a little bit like oil. As much as we're going to wean ourselves of oil as quickly as possible and onto hybrids and clean energy, it's not going to happen overnight. But consumerism is certainly front and center. That last point is really, really interesting, because the changing demographics of commerce is the interaction between business to business, used to call business to business or business to consumer, B2C. They're all these lovely acronyms. It's become all jumbled up now, because the world through e-commerce is available 24/7 all over the world at any time at your convenience. So you can go and make a purchase in Japan at 12:05 tonight without, if you've got insomnia. You can go and buy something and it'll be delivered to you. So the demographics have changed. The users, and I'll show you the users just now. The users have changed. E-commerce to me was always, it's the province of the millennials and the Gen Zs. Everybody's embraced it. So Mr. Bezos up on the right-hand side, with his little company, Amazon Inc. Incorporated, 1.64 trillion. We'll deal with it later, because this is one of the investment companies in the basket that we've chosen as a reference company. It's simply that. It's a behemoth of e-commerce. So we know who he is. But I guarantee you many people on this call doesn't know who this guy is.
I didn't know.
And well, I didn't know, because I simply Googled who invented e-commerce. And it's an English guy by the name of Michael Aldrich in 1979. So it goes back quite a way. And he started the first telephone, it was direct telephone. So it wasn't on computers, it was telephone, connecting buyers to sellers and primarily businesses to consumers. So he's sort of known as the father of e-commerce. We probably all think certainly Jeff Bezos has maybe taken that mantle. But let's move along into the sort of companies that we've chosen. Again, like every note that we look at, these are companies that we've done a lot of work on with the investment company to see, are they fair value? Are they occupying dominant positions? Are they certainly in a position now to say, well, there's good value, now's the time to get in? And are they positioned are they resonating with those headwinds that we're facing, those very dark black clouds? So we'll deal with a little bit later. But you know, Amazon is, I was just saying to Chad earlier, it's the most amazing company. I said to Jill and Chad, when was the first Amazon deal done and what was it for? And they were quite good on their dates. But the first deal they ever did was for the sale of a book. They sold a book online. And that book was sold in 1995. So it's not that long ago. So the rate of adoption, I think that's the point I'm getting to. The rate of adoption of e-commerce is now 24.1% of all deals are done through these type of channels. Okay, we're talking about, and these are American companies. In as much as they're American-based, they've got worldwide adoption. You can go and use them wherever you are in the world. We haven't included within this particular basket something like Alibaba or Pinduoduo, Chinese companies. We've kept it with some of the big players. Etsy was an absolute pandemic darling, little known company that's specialized in artwork and home crafts, and has got this staggering, you know, multiple billion valuation now. PayPal we included recently in a recent note, simply because we believe there's such good value in this particular company as it's not an e-commerce company, it's a payment solution company. So it conduits the money from your bank accounts to the vendors. And Wayfair is pretty much the same thing in terms of Etsy. So let's move along perhaps into the kind of reasoning, or why does e-commerce make sense? And we had some big challenges in 21 for e-commerce because it burst out of the blocks. We had to adopt it by nature of the fact we were locked down. People wanted to go shopping, and it was pretty much that's how business was done. But they had quite a few challenges. I think the global uncertainty in 2020 sort of went on through to 2022, 21. And that global uncertainty is what's going to happen. Is there going to be third wave, fourth wave, fifth wave, which is proved to be correct. But you know, how do consumers move with that global uncertainty in terms of, am I happy to send my money halfway around the world and get this product back? The changing expectations as we went into 21, as e-commerce became so deeply entrenched, people started saying, well, we want this to be delivered tomorrow, and if it's wrong, I want a refund, and I want it done like this and done like that and done like the next. So people are starting to not just adopt, but they're now starting to say, give feedback and say, this is how we'd like it done. I think what's very important, and it comes up in 2022 for the trends, is privacy and security threats. People were threatened. Many, perhaps older people who hadn't been on e-commerce on these portals before, you know, you're giving your bank account details, your PIN codes, your this, that, the next thing, your CCV numbers, you think, whoa, if this falls into the wrong hands, is my data secure? You know, have I got privacy? Is there protection? And in fact, we did a note linked to cybersecurity, and more and more companies, more and more of these e-commerce companies spend huge amounts of money dealing and addressing that particular facet of concern. And that is really the privacy. And you'll see it again, 2022, major input there. Customer loyalty. Obviously, the space has become very busy now. Those are just 4 companies. They're very, very large companies, but there are certainly e-commerce sites that are dedicated to one specific product, one specific service, one specific type of deliverable. So it's very, very noisy, and the personalization of that is actually leading on to that first bullet point. Personalization is king. How do you stand out? Well, certainly we believe Amazon, you know, it's front and center. It just sits there. It's probably the go-to default search engine when you're looking for something on e-commerce. And that's simply why it's worth $1.6 trillion thereabouts. But personalization of your company to your consumer is absolutely king, and then you will stand out. I've used something called the chatbots. I think this also goes with the 4th point, augmented reality, because as we move into a more advanced stage of e-commerce, and the sophistication is going to be where you'll have augmented reality, artificial intelligence. I'm not just talking about, you know, Amazon's Alexis or Google Siri or Apple Siri, wherever it might be. We've got used to that, been around for ages. but it's going to be where literally you can go into a store in an augmented reality, artificial intelligence, and have a 3D sort of complexion of what the product actually looks like, as opposed to a product arriving on your doorstep. Oh, this is not really what I want. The touch feel thing, the whole tactile is becoming, the whole tactile feel is actually becoming digitized now. Voice is cool. We call it voice is cool. When is voice is cool? I made a note on this because it was something, yeah, I think really when you search for something, your voice, you can actually going to be start saying, I want to look for a teddy bear with a blue collar and this and that and the next thing. And it's going to be voice recognition. It's not typing in and searching with search bars. It's going to start picking up IVR, integrated voice recognition. So it's very tech, very digital, very progressive. It goes back to that rubber band that I always talk about in 2020, where the tech space took us into the future, which is now the present. The green beret is important. A lot of these companies are very, very focused on environmental sustainability, good governance, the ESG movement, and it creates a lot of customer base. That's not going anywhere. That's in fact getting bigger. Certainly with, from the war, going back to that previous slide, more and more people are saying we need to wean ourselves off other products, and certainly these companies are in a position to hook you up into alternatives to perhaps legacy fossil fuels, if that's the one area looking at. Jill, if we could go to the next, sorry, thank you. So the next slide.
Multitask.
Yeah. Flexibility. Again, we're getting sophisticated. Flexibility. How do you want to, and it links up with fulfillment. How do you want your products delivered to you? Do you want to buy a drone? Do you want to buy a, do you want to go into an actual store and have it in town and go and pick it up at your convenience after it's been paid for? So flexibility and fulfillment are becoming really, really important. There comes your customer privacy again. It's a big trend. It's a growing trend. I think the whole takeout lesson from 2020 is that if we are in a digital space, digital customer acquisition data has to be completely secure. So that space is going to be revisited, I think, by all these companies. And it's a big driver. The rebound of the mom and pop stores, some lovely stories here. You know, we talk about Amazon, we talk about Alibaba, we talk about all the big guys. But a lot of these mom and pop stores actually are having their products put onto these big platforms. So Amazon will have, you know, mom and pop homemade ginger beer made in Alabama, according to Great Aunt Mary's original recipe. And there's a little bit of there's a big rebound in these mom and pop stores. We always talk about, well, when we were growing up, there was always the guy on the corner that you went to the butcher and you had your baker and you had an individual relationship. And I think a lot of people feel that some of the mom and pop stores that have survived the pandemic are well worth supporting. They've got great products. They're niche. They're never going to challenge Pepsi or Coke if we talk about ginger beer. But it's something that there's a place for them as well. And there again, priority of data safety. It's absolutely crucial. You know, for a company, any company, quite frankly, to have a breach, it causes huge reputational risk in terms of, will you deal with that company in the future? Will you go back and use their portals, give them your details? So it's a fast changing world. You know, just out of interest, I was saying to Jill and Chad as well, and again, it integrates into the stories that Cashbox looks at, these resonating stories. Amazon is going to be the biggest, how shall I call it? It's going to be a bigger deliverer of parcels than UPS and FedEx in the United States. It's just ordered 100,000 electric vehicles. So that goes to another note that we produce, which we're watching very carefully. So these companies are sort of front and center, not just in e-commerce, in terms of purveying a product from a warehouse to you at home or wherever you might be. They are obviously they're at different levels and plugging in to different sectors that are all exposed in growth. Now, BVVA, the Spanish investment bank, has made this a fixed income order call note. When I say fixed income, I'd like to use the word guaranteed there because the income stream cannot be interrupted. It can only be interrupted by two things: One, the bank going insolvent, which is highly unlikely. And the second one is if those underlying companies, that four that we've run through briefly, if they overperform, then we get the famous auto call. So these coupons are not conditional on the underlying companies performing at any level. They can literally go to nothing. They still got to keep paying them out. They're not conditional. I think that's a very important word. Most income notes are conditional. This is actually our second non-conditional note. We launched another one earlier this year, and they were taken up. So we've looked at it again. And again, I think certainly within a portfolio, this has definitely got a place. Quarterly, either in US dollars and GBP. And I'm, as many products as I'm involved in producing, I'm starting to get a bit concerned about how fast these quarters come around, because it sort of means that the years are going by past pretty quickly. Great to have the coupons paid or auto called, but it does give one the opportunity to reset every 3 months to say, well, what's happened in the last 3 months? And the first 3 months of this year have been pretty dramatic. So let's go on to the next slide. Just going to run through these quickly. You'll see in the following slide as well, I'll stay on this one for the moment, but in the following slide, you'll see a very similar trend line for all four companies. So they are in the same space, they're in the same sector. You can read the blurb on the right-hand side. Amazon is the granddaddy of these in terms of, as I say, 1.65 trillion. The rest are in the hundreds of billions or tens of billions of dollars worth. But they've all, we believe, and this is what the bank looks at, they want to acquire these companies with your loot, if I can put it like that, at a reasonable value and with the prospects that they're going to rise. And that will mean that they can then disrupt the payment of that income. Now, that's the only reason that income premium coupons will be paid, is if the four shares rise up above their start prices. So let's have a look at the last two, Wayfair and PayPal. Again, if you can just mirror it, it's a very similar sort of histogram in terms of what the charts are doing. But the bankers looked at this and said, given those headwinds, given the story, the narrative that I said tonight, it's a good opportunity to get a good discount into these particular companies and put them in a reference basket and pay those premiums. I think I'm going to hand over to Chad now. He'll just run through in terms of, I sort of prefaced where the product is, and he can really just rapid fire into the actual terms of the actual product.
Cool. Thanks, Andrew.
Cool.
Always fascinating to listen to the story in the background. So thanks for sharing. BVVA, again, Fitch and A Moody's, A-rated, as we know. The coupon is available either in GBP or USD, so it's quite nice. We can get a currency diversification if we want. Each would have its own ISIN number, reference number, which we can get from Kim, no problem. And what is fascinating then is this is a guaranteed return coupon, irrespective of the share value. So we'd receive the quarterly payment until such time as the product auto calls. So as you can see, it has a maximum period of 4 years, but a minimum period of 12 months. So it would run the first 12 months. Should the shares be over their start price, the product will close. If not, at month 12, any quarterly observation thereafter. We've spoken about the reference basket. Thanks, Andrew, for that. The capital protection, very deep level again. So as long as the stocks are above 50% at final observation, if it ever got there, you'd still get 100% of your capital out as long as it was above the 50%. We'll look at a graph now just to picture it again. The availability, we have until the 25th of April for the funds to be distributed from your platform into the product. And again, if you could let Kim know if you were keen, we'd be able to then help you with the dealing placement sheet. And again, pounds or dollars from 10,000. Lovely option. Thanks, Jill. So in terms of the fact sheet, we've all seen this before. If there's anybody on the call, as Jill said, that needs to understand this in more detail, please reach out. We'd love to take you through the detail. Most people will be able to read this that have been in notes before. Everything is outlined. On the right-hand side, the subscription period is between now and the 27th of April, but we'd obviously always encourage you to be at least 2 days before that so we don't run out of time and or capacity. So we have a quantity of pounds and dollars. and we have this end period. So as long as we don't run out of time or capacity, we're good to go. Thanks, Jill. So this is an interesting sheet as always. We've got observation periods or dates, but what you'll notice, there's no observation in the first 3. Why? Because the bank is guaranteed to pay us, and will pay your platform on the 4th of August, 4th of November, etc., all the way down. Once the auto call is available at observation 4, quarter 4, the shares will be observed, and should they be above their start price, the product will close out. Should they not be, they'll keep paying as guaranteed all the way to the end, and there's your 50% capital protection barrier at the bottom. If we ever get to that point. As you know, all products for the last 5 years have auto called before final observation. So I think the next one is the graph.
Sorry.
So if you could high speed read that. All right. So again, it doesn't matter what these shares do through the life of the product, the coupons will still pay out at some time in the future. Once all 4 shares are above their start price, the product will auto call and the product will close. Our full capital will flow back to our platforms, having received all the quarterly flows, including the last one, of course. That's an ideal situation for the bank. That's where they're going to go make money out of the options, and this is how they pay for paying us for utilizing their cash. The capital protection barrier, you can see at the bottom right-hand side of that graph. Should we ever get to the point where the last quarter comes around, as long as we're above 50% full capital out. And again, over the last 5 years, all the products have also called as designed. Thanks, Jill. And then, as you know, investor opens an investment platform. Investor funds their platform. Investor instructs the bank or the platform to place the deal with the bank, and the funds would flow back in exactly the same flow. We don't touch the cash. We get a raising fee from the bank for aggregating and bringing the community together. Very fee light, very clean, highly regulated system. The advisor on the right-hand side. We love chatting to advisors. If there's anybody that wants to chat, see if we can help you help your community as well. We'd love to do that. All right, over 200 notes issued from IDAD over the last 5 years. It's an incredible number per year, and all designed and delivering as required. Thanks, Jill. And of course, if you'd like to give us a call, contact us. Any questions, support at Cashbox, Jill at Cashbox, Kim at Cashbox, Andrew. It's very easy to get hold of us. And then if you'd like to, we'd love you to follow us on LinkedIn. We're always putting out information. Jill has a lovely communication program. It's about learnings. It's not spam. And then, of course, if we've got new products, there's always the chat there. So love you to follow us there. I think that's it.
Yeah, so I think with that, questions. Has anyone got any questions? I know that Manj had said on the chat, she said that Amazon has just offered bonds now.
Yeah, so Amazon's an interesting company because it's got to such a large market capitalization, and the actual share is really become very expensive. So it was announced very recently in the last fortnight by Jeff and the leadership team that Amazon is going to do what's called a share split, the 20-for-1 share split. Now, what that means is that the value of the company doesn't dilute. It just means that the actual share, the numbers of shares will be multiplied by 20. So the availability of shares for a smaller investor will basically be, it'll be a better deal. So in other words, you'll take the price of a share divided by 20, and that'll be the entry point from that. So this may not happen. I think the indicative split will be in May. So what would happen in this particular instance is that we would price on the strike date would be Amazon's current price, whatever it is at that date. And then when the share split does happen, we would reprice it, but there would be no downside There's nothing negative. All it is really not marketing, but it creates more liquidity in the actual company. On the bond side, yeah, I mean, any company can create a corporate bond. It's based against your credit rating, very much like a country will issue a bond. Its sovereign rating will predominate or dominate. Corporate bonds you generally find have a higher yield end in terms of what they're offering in terms of output percentage. But again, then you've got to look very closely at what those financials are of those companies. And essentially, a bond is a debt instrument. This is a debt instrument. This is of the bank, not of the actual company. A bond is essentially a debt instrument, debt issuance from the company with its own balance sheet.
Cool. There's a question from Chris. How does the unconditional payout work if there's still capital protection?
Can I do that?
Yeah, sure.
So Chris, good to chat again. What the bank is doing is they're underwriting to pay us each quarter as it passes. They're waiting for the shares to rise above their start price that they can go and create value. And it's from that value that they're going to have paid us over that period of time. So they're going to be comfortable that the shares are going to do just this, so that they can cover the cost of the borrowed money, if you like, from us. If, however, the product still runs right to the end of term, maybe one of these stocks misbehaves, as long as it's above 50% of its start price, our full capital will come back out.
And that's at the very last observation.
Only at the very, very last observation. We've got 4 years for some growth, right? So what's the likelihood of that happening, and why? Why is the bank this confident they can issue this off their balance sheet? They're taking the risk that this would happen. Should it happen, and it has not happened in the last 5 years in all the stuff that we've been involved with, that it does breach that 50%, we will get out our capital as if we own the shares directly. So Chris, let's say the worst performing was at 45%, we get 45% of our capital out. That's bad for us and for the bank, and it's certainly not what they've structured for in their belief for the product. Does that answer the question, Chris?
Awesome. Okay. No, he's typing.
Cool. Thanks. And Chris, if you'd like a chat, with pleasure always. Eh? Frank, it's lovely to see you. Have you any questions? Okay.
Excellent. Any other questions from anybody else? Everyone's so quiet. Everyone's like in the chat.
I think we understand these backwards. So I think you've done a great job there.
Thank you.
It is weird to look at you on screen.
Yes. Normally in Cape Town.
Yeah, normally far away.
But yeah, so if anybody would like to move ahead or if you've got any questions, just pop a mail through to support@cashbox.global, and then we can move forward. And then just to remember that if you do want to go into, actually, you need to have your funds on your platform with the instruction by the 25th, so that we have enough time to make sure that you are in the system. And then just for those people that are on, okay, Simi, I guess you'll assist us for the platform. Yes, we're able to assist you with the platform. We have a lot of clients that are using Ramsey Crookall that they're very happy with, so we can send through the details for that. And then just in terms of that, on the 20th, we've arranged for Ramsey Crookall to do a demo on using the dashboard. So that's going to be on the 20th. The invites went out today. And Pat, thank you very much for my birthday wishes.
Yeah.
And then we'll send through the information on the platform. Well, thank you everybody, and have a fantastic evening, and we will chat to you soon.